This is a game in the IS-6, the premium Russian heavy tank at tier 8 on mines. And they changed a little bit of mines, particularly around this area right here in terms of the way that they shaped this opening. They widened it a little bit and flattened it out a little bit. But there's still these sort of almost like slight depressions on each side, which allow you to get hulled down a little bit. And in this particular game, that will end up being relevant. I still think that the north spawn still has an advantage for taking the hill in terms of having better firing lanes. Yeah, so I'll show you some of those differences once we get up there and how you can potentially exploit them. And still, it seems like the best thing to do right off the bat, if you're a heavy tank on mines, is to push towards the center opening here and hopefully be able to get into a position where you can get shots. And ideally, you don't have your team boxing you in like this. A lot of times, people will sit back here and try to get shots, but especially when you have your team pushing forward like that, you'll see that these guys actually don't get any good shots from where they're at. And all they're doing is slowing down their team, unfortunately. But we will eventually get up here. And so you'll see that this sort of ramp that goes up here is a little bit flatter, but that there's a sort of a ridge in between the two sides. And so most of their tanks are sitting back. And so if you take that path that Panther took, you're going to take a lot of damage. But if you stay a little bit closer to this wall, then you can use this hill to essentially protect you as you go up. You still don't necessarily want to drive up straight away, especially if there's no artillery. If there's artillery, then they basically widened it so that artillery has better lanes through here from the south. But it's still really not that great. And then see how they're backing off now? So as soon as they back off, then you can start pushing up and try not to miss shots like I just missed. And then once you get up here, it plays fairly similarly. So we see that they sent a couple people over towards the island side, which is fine. There's still a lot of hills there that sort of block you, keep you safe from the island side, at least when they start getting up to that GF area. You can still get shot down from the JK island area, so you kind of have to keep an eye on that. And so there's a lot of tanks here, and so just keeping them lit is fine. There's no need for me to peek into 3 guns in order to get one shot at this point. We're still waiting to see what's developing on a lot of the rest of the map. We don't have a whole lot of tanks on that north side, so that's something that we're going to have to keep an eye on, right? We've got some guys on the island, we've got some guys in the water, and we've got some guys on the hill, but we don't really have anybody on that backside. So they've pushed through somewhat aggressively, and so all our hill guys really need to do is just flex back, and they'll be able to pick that up. And so as our guys flex back, right, I don't want to get caught out here, so I back up, right? Because I don't want to make it a situation where these guys see them retreating and then I get to a position where I'm vulnerable. And I want to go back and help these guys if I can, but as I do that, these guys start to become a little bit more aggressive, so I'm sort of a little bit locked in place here. And they're starting to they came around the lower underneath the hill to go all the way around. And so basically our guys here are stuck inside a pincer, but that's fine to an extent, because our hill guys can also, once they clear up the north side, be able to come back and help out on this side. And so they're sort of pushing up on this hill a little bit. And they're still pushing around on this side. And so these guys need to come back to this side to help me out, because they're trying to push their tanks through here, and so like shooting at that T-25 AT that's going to die is almost a waste of time if you're already on this hill, and you can instead focus on these guys that are trying to push up the ramp and get behind you. And so I'm just backing up to make it so that they have to drive a little bit further. It protects a little bit of my lower glaciers on the side, and really the only shot that they have would be into the shoulder. And if they give you a drive wheel like that, you always want to try to take it if you can. And then now I can sort of counter push out because we've cleared out this north side of the face. So now these guys are in a situation where they're getting flanked a little bit. And so it's one of those things where as our team is flexing back, I make myself small. I make myself less of a target, and as their team sort of becomes more vulnerable when we secure that area, I make myself I'd be more aggressive, and I look to get shots of damage. And I have to be careful here because it's really easy to shoot the barrel of that gun. It's like perfectly positioned so that it makes it difficult for me to shoot this Tiger P. And I end up shooting it right there. But see, so now they've basically shrunk down. So they basically have 4 squares of map control, right? Just those 4 squares. They have 2 guys back there, 2 guys up front, neither of which I want to push directly into. We see how we have this Firefly coming around the south, though. So he's going to have an opportunity to expose these guys. So if I shift over, I can potentially cover him and take care of that. We have enough guys on this north that they can't just push in straight off. It looked like they were shifting north, so I started going back just in case, but then they stopped, which is fine. And then so what I want to be able to do is catch this guy out here, and then I need to be able to get back in case they counter push. Okay, so that guy's down. Now I need to get back over here as quickly as I can, just to make sure that they're not going to counter push there. And then if they don't, then we can go back and maybe slide down the hill and go through there. But at least this ISU is trying to counter in. And so we get him. And you see the Roomba is starting to drive up that other side as well. So this is not a very coordinated push. They're sort of going one at a time, which is somewhat to our advantage, but it's not going to save our FTM, unfortunately. And the T-20 is able to take out the Roomba. Okay, so now we know the situation that we have is that there's a T-34 with 1100 health, which means it's going to take 3 shells from me to kill him, absent of the T-20 actually doing no damage. And I have 700 health, so he only takes 2 shots to kill me. He fixates on the T-20, which allows me to get a free shot of damage, and then he shoots at the T-20, which then, as soon as that happens, I know that I'm in a 2-shot situation, and I have the advantage of reload. So all I have to do is make sure that I deal damage, and the game is over. So the important things that happened in here, well, once I got around our roadblock over here, is that I was able to play this depression on this hill and leverage that into a situation where it allowed me to get up onto the hill without getting shot, basically. And a large part of that is I could have stayed there for a while and just traded with those guys like the T-34, tried to shoot the hatch, peek up, try to get the shoulder or the driver's hatch of the IS-6 situation. So I could have traded there against those guys if they stayed up. But as soon as they moved back, I moved to a forward position where I can proxy them and be in a position where basically I can control this corner right here. And then at that time they started pushing around the backside of the hill, which since we had the hill, our guys that were up here flexed back. You don't want to send everybody back necessarily, and basically I was held into this corner by their guys that were in this area here, which is fine because we had enough back here to actually deal with that. They, instead of pushing out that way towards our cap, they pushed towards the ramp, which is fine. It got our guys in a good pincer right here. Our hill guys should have focused more on these guys that were crossing over here rather than the T-25 AT and whatever else junk was out here, which was at that point irrelevant because these guys were in the middle, were dying, and if we lost this ramp position, then their area was going to be compromised, and so that was going to be a problem. And then after that, it's really just a numbers game in terms of we have their tanks locked down into a specific area, and you're just looking to exploit any advantages that you have. In particular, since they didn't really have slow tanks, they had high alpha tanks, but not really good DPM tanks. Just look to pick them off, and when they tried to do that counter push, be sure that you're in a position where you can make them pay for trying to counter push that. And then against that T-34 at the end, that's just simply being opportunistic and taking advantage of when he's fixating on that T20, getting you your free shot of damage, and sort of knowing the score. Like I knew that I needed to shoot that T-34 3 times in order to kill him, but he only needed to shoot me twice, so I wanted to get a free shot in there someplace. Otherwise it would have been close. Like if it was just I could have just pushed into him and we could have traded with each other, but it would have been really close, and I think he probably would have won by a few seconds, assuming that we both penned our shots and rolled for reasonable amounts of damage. So that's really all that I was looking for in that particular situation. Okay, so if we look at the stats, we ended up doing pretty well from that position. Again, because most of those shots are point blank, you're going to be you want to be pretty efficient with your shots in terms of dealing damage. When they pushed up on that hill, play in a defensive position. I knew that they didn't have anybody in their base. They had that Tiger P that was pretty far back, but he wasn't in a position where he could shoot me as I backed up. So as they pushed up the ramp, I knew that I could back up and help played a little bit more defensively there, give them less to shoot at as they tried to push up the ramp, which allowed us to bounce a lot of shots. Anyhow, so I hope that was helpful in terms of playing a heavy tank on mines and what I think, what areas I think are potentially useful and how to play them. And thanks for watching.